Hey guys, welcome to Coffee with DT. Today I've got Robert Pavlone. He is a senior developer at Walk West. And Robert, we're excited to have you hanging out for a little bit today, man. How you doing?
Yeah, coffee with DT. I'm excited to be here.
So one of the things that the genesis of this conversation is great. So I have this little flashing thing on my forehead that says Don doesn't know what he's talking about. And so occasionally I will ask my team for estimates on things, and they'll give me these estimates, and not fully realizing from time to time that I've got 20 years in technology, creative, and have dealt with estimation for a long part of my career, and have got a few tips and tricks to try to understand how many things cost. And so one of our creatives told me something was 2 weeks, and not going to say her name, Megan, on the thing. And I was like, there's no way that this can be 2 weeks. And she's like, no, I think pretty much it's 2 weeks, kind of probably. I was like, yeah, get Robert. I said, get him on the phone right now. She's like, no, I'll go talk to him. I was like, no, get him right now. And so we get Robert on the Zoom session. And then I asked Robert how long this development process is going to take. And Robert, how long was the estimate for that answer?
Like 5 hours, whatever the same was. Yeah, the same as before. Yeah.
Yeah, 5 hours, not 2 weeks. So one of the things that is fun and interesting that I do want to dig in and talk about is when you think about creative work, technology work, anything that is that a thought, knowledge worker, I think is a term that's accurate. How do you know how long something's going to take? That is really the multi-million dollar, if not billion-dollar question in our industry. And so, Robert, one of the things that I wanted to just ask you is when you're looking at a website, creative work, how do you estimate how long it's going to take to do what you do? What are some of the thinking that goes into that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I often struggle with that myself. Pretty much like on every project is different, but for me, I think the best tools to measure is kind of like past experience and past projects. So I always kind of use that as a benchmark. Like, what have I built in the past that's similar to this? How long did that take me? I always kind of try to start there to see if that could be a good benchmark for me. Sometimes I've never built something before, so sometimes it's kind of just like a best guess on certain types of web pages and experiences and things like that. But I think a good example for me for like a full website project, usually the way I do it is I'm a developer. I think in like pieces and parts and components and modules and like, building blocks. So I try to figure out first, like, what am I building? I mean, how many pages are there? How many different types of page layouts are we building? What types of content are we going to have? What types of imagery are we going to use? Things like that. So I always try to start, and usually it's me working in collaboration with the design team and the content team to try to figure out like what all, do we just want to rebuild this site that exists currently? If so, what do they have? Let's kind of take an inventory. Or do we want to do something completely different? If so, like, let's make a list and let's kind of like outline it out and then put hours and estimates to each piece and then kind of add it all up and figure it out that way.
That makes sense. When you're thinking about ways customers can communicate what they want in a way that you can estimate, how important is it for a client to share examples of what they have seen that they like before, right? Even just to give you kind of a benchmark, but how does that help you as a technologist at least give them a better scope of what that work would be?
Oh yeah, I mean, real world examples are like gold. I mean, that's almost like the most important thing. If you can show me an example of something that you like, that you want to do something similar to, like, that already gives me so much more information than if you were just trying to describe it. Because one thing I've found, and even like starting at Walk West and kind of talking with the teammates and things like that, people refer to different things by different names, you know? So, you know, I might call something an image slider. You know, I want an image slider on my homepage. Somebody else might call it a carousel. Somebody else might call it a scrolling content widget. You know, so like if I ask somebody to describe something, I'm kind of hearing it through my lens, and I may not be really actually correctly interpreting what they're looking for. So like if they have an example to show me, super helpful.
Oh man, one of the things that in accounts that I've been involved in directly is we've used that show and tell mindset and then actually walked through 3 or 4 different designs that appealed to a client, and they were able to pick the different parts of different designs that they liked. But it was 2 things. Number 1, it gave us a better feel for the scope of what they were looking for. But number 2, it was real-time feedback in terms of the complexity of the different components. Because we could tell the customer right there in that working workshop meeting what was going to be a more high-end build, what could be done in a moderate way, and what was quick and easy. And I think a lot of times when we're working with clients that don't really understand what's under the covers of what they're asking, they don't know how to associate what their goals and dreams are with the budget that they have. And that's kind of where a lot of the conflict occurs. But I think those kind of workshop meetings I've seen work in a really good way. What could clients, give me some best practices or tips that clients can do or use to work better with creative technical people to get more quality output from you? And Megan, this is a question for you as well as for Robert.
Yeah, I think so. Honestly, just kind of bouncing off what you just said. I mean, a lot of times, you know, in technology, we like to talk about the MVP, right? Minimum viable product. Like, what's the thing, the core of what you want to build, and then what features are nice to have? Because a lot of times, I mean, we have X number of weeks, X number of months to build something. So at the end of that, we need to have the MVP done. We need to have like the minimum viable product, just to repeat that again, but like we need to have that. And you know, you wanted it to, you know, animate a certain way. You wanted it to you know, maybe like do something else cool when somebody clicks on something. Like that's all nice to have, but we need to have the MVP done. So like figuring out what that is, to me, like at the earliest point possible is kind of critical. So that's probably one of the most important things, I would think.
That makes sense. Megan, more from the content strategy standpoint, but how can customers help you help them better?
I think what Robert touched on earlier about maybe having like descriptors, visual descriptors of what exactly you're referring to is really key. And Robert and I have worked together on several website projects. And one day I wasn't joking, but I said it like I was like, Robert, can you just teach me how this works? Because I feel like I'm mitigating a lot of things from the content perspective, from the brand perspective, like the project management piece, and I'm speaking to something that you're an expert in that I have touched on. But there's a lot of pieces that go into building a really beautiful, high functioning website that I don't actually understand. And Robert was basically like, no. And I was like, but Robert, I need to understand so that we can work better together in the future. And he's like, I don't have time, which is 100% true that he doesn't have time to do that. But that communication piece from the content writing, the project management standpoint has been huge. And I think when you're working with a customer to estimate deadlines, that minimum viable product Robert's talking about, it's really important if you have an account executive or someone on your team, a project manager, that they're discussing directly with the designers and developers the scope of the project and asking for their estimates before they're putting something in the SOW, the statement of work, that might not be 100% accurate, because you want your whole team to be on the same page, moving towards the same goal, so that things don't slip through the cracks, so that people aren't stressed out, and that you can get the best product in the best timeline.
No, that's really good. And I think, one of the things that I'll echo again, clients today want to co-develop with their partners. And so they don't just want to send over their ideas, then you send something back. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, that's slow and inefficient. Number two is when you can make somebody a part of the process, everybody gets a chance to take ownership of the output. And so then it's, from a relational standpoint with our clients, it's not us versus them. It's something that we're building together. And I've seen in our project work at Walk West, the clients that we are co-developing with as partners, it works out so much better. So there's a client that you guys worked on, but I'll just say it out loud by name. They're going to do a testimonial for us, so it's fine to mention. It's K-pop. And so we didn't actually do all of the development. We did a lot of the design work, the estimation. We helped them with the content and the social. And then their development team, because they're a technology company, did a lot with the design. And then we came back and did some of the QA. But what a great relationship, because throughout the entire process, the CEO of the company was available for questions. We were very collaborative. And now what's really cool is we didn't charge them the same amount because they did do some of the development, but we now are getting more and more ongoing work based on the quality of the relationship that was developed during the end-to-end process, right? And I couldn't be more proud of our team, because that's the model that we want. The price point is one thing, but we want to develop clients for life. And so now that they're happy with the website, now they're happy with the social, now they're ready to do some testimonials, now they want to come back and do more content. Like, it all worked together, but it started with a very collaborative process on the website. And that's something that customers remember, is not just the output of what you deliver, but the process that you deliver it through. And so, Robert, let me ask this specific question with that. When you think a customer is going to make a bad decision about what they're asking you to do, how do you tell them that they're going down a wrong path? How do you move them off of this bad decision, and we've seen this before, to what we think are some better options based on data, experience, and we're experts in a certain area?
Oh man, yeah, that's a loaded question right there. No, but I do agree with pretty much everything you just said about collaboration, and especially with the client, because I mean, for my piece of or my phase of a website development project, it's kind of a long process, long drawn out. Like, there's a lot of time that goes into the development phase. So the sooner we can kind of get actionable, clickable, working things in front of the client, the better. We're still trying to, as a team, figure out what exactly that looks like, because it's also a little dangerous showing people something that's not done yet. So, oftentimes they're focused on the wrong things, like, why doesn't it look exactly like you promised me it would look like? But we're still trying to figure that out and what makes the most sense there. But like, to actually get them something workable that they can navigate and browse around and click it, and to actually like how it's going to work, I think is very helpful. So to that end, when they are looking for something that doesn't really make sense, sometimes it just helps to show them, like, here's why that's not really the best idea. And then we can kind of show them in real time and let them like play around with their idea. And a lot of times it makes sense in your head, but when you actually see it, and you actually like use it and try to play around with it, it's not exactly how you had thought about it in your head. So that's one thing I really like to do, is just get something working in front of people to show them. Or maybe it's like an example of something. Here's a real world example of something that we would like to propose, why we think this is better, and here, like, go try it and see,
Yeah. So you said a couple things that I think are really powerful. Show and tell, I think, is that next extension of co-developing with a client, because seeing does allow you to walk through examples. And then the second thing, and I'll share this as I work with you guys on some things with my personal brand and site, never show the client just one example of something, right? In the early phases, right? Say, look, here's a scenario that we believe in, but here's a couple of other routes that you could take. And we want to have a discussion about these couple of scenarios, because early in the process, before we're hard coding anything, I think what you talked about is really the wireframe. Is that would be the right term, right?
Yeah.
It is showing people wireframes or things in InDesign. Envision, I think, is the tool that people can actually play with, so that now they get the look and the feel of it before we've over invested a significant amount of those development hours in building to the wrong concept. And I think that middle step of really collaborating at that level has saved a lot of time, right? And then the other thing that I would say as we wrap up and get to kind of the final question is we really need to make sure we know who the ultimate decision makers are. We had a couple of sites in our past that went live with sign off from several people in an organization. CEO got a look at it. I'm not really loving it. And our team's like, you've got to be kidding me. We have written documentation sign off from these different people. And they're talking to me in the office about, we didn't do it wrong. We didn't do it. If the ultimate customer doesn't like it, then you're wrong. It's not their fault that we kept designing and didn't make sure that the ultimate decision maker, right, signed off on the project. And so our project leads, our sales professionals, business development, we have to really know who that ultimate decider is early in the process and make sure those stakeholders see the work that we're doing, so that it's always easier and less expensive to make changes and updates to the scope and to the designs early versus late in the process. And so that's one of the kind of the lessons that I've seen us learn. Last question, Robert. If you had if you had to teach me as the CEO of the company something about your job that I don't understand, like what don't I understand about what you do that you think I should? What would you have me learn up on? What would you spend the next coffee with? What would you have me understand more about the powerful work that you do?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I feel like I want to like spend a little time digesting that one. I'm a little like, I know this is probably not what you're getting at, but I would really like everyone to have a somewhat baseline understanding of what it takes to build a website, like how you actually would write the code to develop a website. Like what a lot of people don't know is you could actually write a web page in like Microsoft Word, or like honestly your simplest text editor on your computer. You could sit down and you could just write the code out. Like it's readable. It's HTML. Like that's the foundation of every website. That's how every website is built. And you could honestly sit down and write it out in a text editor and have a web page. That's kind of like my personal thing. I would like everybody to like understand how simple it is to the base level, like fundamentals of a website. I'd like to understand that. I like people to understand that. And but as far as like from a more business perspective, I think just process and time. So like what the best process is for getting the best final product, like you were mentioning, like wireframes, design, those phases are absolutely critical because it's really easy to make changes and updates when you're in those phases. When you're at the end of development and you're about to launch the site, like that's the wrong time to be rethinking, you know, the layout of a certain page. So like just as far as process workflow, those types of things. And then also just timing, how long it takes to do stuff. It's a little bit of a tricky thing because honestly, like only a developer would probably know how long something takes. But, you know, when you're talking about certain types of changes, they may seem simple, but they may actually take, you know, a lot longer. So I guess maybe the takeaway there would be spend a few extra minutes when you're in wireframes and when you're in design thinking about those things, you know, if that's fair to say. But really thinking through those concepts and like what we're showing you as a client, and is that really what you want? Because I think as a lot of times it's tempting in those phases to just kind of see things and say, oh yeah, that looks good, you know, I like how that looks, but actually think about, is that what you really
What you
want?
want. Yeah, that's a great way to end it. I mean, a follow-on kind of task or ask is like, we should have some micro videos on how clients should participate in a design review, right? What should they be thinking? What questions should they be asking? Because we can move from, oh yeah, that looks pretty good, versus what is the way to rethink the customer journey while you're looking at the design, right? And
Yeah,
actually walk through those various steps. And so, Robert, I appreciate you taking some time. I always learn something when I talk to you, and glad that you're in business with us and on the team. And we'll
thanks.
call it for now. But think so much. You gave the quick answer, but think about what you'd like me to know about what you do, and I'm interested. And so
Okay.
put some thought into it, and then we'll circle back, and I'll ask you again in about a week.
All right, that sounds good. I will.
All right, guys, talk soon. Thanks a bunch.
Okay.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Megan.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.